All right, and we are live. Let me just make sure this is going out okay. No robot voice, none of that. Uh, Come on. And come on. Come on, damn it. Harold's old live stream. Here we go. Okay. So hope y'all went to church. Uh, Although I know some of you in the more western parts of America, you should be in church now. So I don't expect a large amount of listeners, but I just felt like streaming, and going to stream when I get the chance since the schedule's a little bit more busy. What with work and all. So a few things I wanted to talk about. First of all, I'm going to soon do an Amazon wish list for a way for people to donate. I kind of drug my feet on that, and for the longest time, I thought it sounded faggy to do it. I know a lot of people do it. A lot of content creators do that. It just seemed like cam girl findom shit to me, and to some extent, kind of still does. But I'm just going to swallow my pride on it because, like, I drug my feet for a little bit, not as long, but a little bit when I saw everybody doing the super chat thing because AdSense isn't a very good revenue stream for me, if I'm being honest with you. Don't get me wrong, I certainly appreciate the super chats. Don't misunderstand me there, but I got to get to $100 before I can cash out on it. And you also have to remember YouTube or Google's taking some off the top there. So it's not as preferable as, say, Patreon or the PayPal for donations. But at the same time, that's my problem. That's not your problem. A lot of you guys like doing the super chat. So like I said, a lot of you guys like doing the super chat. If you like doing it, I certainly appreciate it. I certainly appreciate any kind of donation. Forney's talking about you need to get Brave payments. Yes, I'm looking into that as well. There's a bunch of things I want to set up. That's kind of the point I'm making here. That's why I'm going to do the Amazon wish list. I want to get as many revenue streams as possible. If you, as a listener, like what I do and you wish to support me in some way, I want to make it as convenient for you, whatever you prefer. If you like doing a super chat, do the super chat. If you want to shoot me something on PayPal, do that. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, do that. If you want to grab me some dumb shit I like to buy off my Amazon wish list, do that. I'm going to look into the Brave thing. I'm going to get myself one of those cryptocurrency wallet thingamajiggies so that you can send me Bitcoin and Dogecoin and Bechtloff coin and PayPiggy coin and whatever other fucking cryptocurrency, Sonic the Hedgehog rings and Chaos Emeralds and whatever the fuck else you want to send me. I'm going to diversify that shit so that however it is, a listener wants to support me, they can support me. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and do the Amazon wish list. I haven't done it yet because I'm not entirely sure what the address situation is on that. I've looked into it a little bit this morning. There seems to be some discrepancy on whether or not you can hide your address. I'm going to just go ahead and look into doing a P.O. box if I go ahead and do the Amazon wish list thing. Now, on the Amazon wish list, what's going to be on there is there's going to be some typical dumb shit that I like. Some books I have in mind, maybe some old video games, maybe some newer games like for the Switch or something, maybe an action figure or other dumb, goofy shit that I like to buy. But there's also going to be, and this is obviously more high end, but there's also going to be better equipment to make this show better put on there. So if you're like, I like that Bechtloff guy, I like what he's doing, I'm going to go ahead and buy him a Darkwing Duck action figure because he's a big dork that'll get a big kick out of that. Fantastic. Appreciate it. Also, if you're like, I like that Bechtloff guy show, but it's fucking amateur hour, I want to get him some better equipment so it sounds better, is better, whatever. Fucking fantastic. Go do that. That's what we're going to do on the Amazon wish list. Like I said, though, I got to look into the address thing before I go ahead and do that. But that's coming down the pike. as I said, it felt kind of gay, but whatever. I'm over it. Swallow my pride. If there are people that want to do that, do that. If there are people who want to do the super chat, do the super chat. If you want to send me whatever. If I'm asking you to support my endeavors here, it's incumbent on me to make it as convenient for you as possible. So, Matt Forney says, I was going to send some Amish coins, but they all drowned in a tub of shit. And he said, talking about Brave payments, you get automatically paid by fans who use Brave browser. Yeah, I'm looking into that. I got to figure that out. Okay, so somebody in the chat here, Bechtloff, I think you touched on the low T church leaders last night complaining about Trump. That's the same issue with the channel What, WWUTT. They lied about Trump calling him a pornographer and other shit. I was not aware that they did that. I've watched a few. It's an acronym, stands for When We Understand the Text. I've watched a few of their videos. Most of what I've watched from them is pretty good. They're very, very good about understanding the scripture. They're not. I don't go to them for politics. So if there was a video on Trump, I probably didn't click on it. But if they said that, I mean, they're wrong. I don't know where they got pornographer from. I mean, yes, his wife had posed nude. His current wife had posed nudes before, but last I checked, Trump didn't produce that. Somebody says you need to get your name out there. I wouldn't even know about you if it wasn't for CF. A lot of people have found me through other means like that. I mean, there's a lot of people who found me through my associations with guys like Forney, Aaron Clary, David Serini, and yes, Common Filth, and even Razor Fist, and hell, there's some people who found me because I had Medicare on here. That's why I try to get a lot of guests. I'm small enough that getting guests is a struggle, but it should be easier now that I go back to a regular schedule. But I do try and get a good amount of guests. And that's for getting my name out there. I mean, I'm on Gab, I'm on Facebook. I don't really know many other ways to get my name out there. I'm not allowed on the Twitter. There are vicious rumors that I'm on there under a troll account, but you can't prove that. Let's see. Somebody says the what channel are literal 6 days creationists? Yeah, I figured they probably would be. It's not surprising. Again, I mean, I'm not totally in the can for that channel. I just think they've had some really good videos. I thought they had some tremendously good videos on Orthodoxy and Catholicism. I don't try to fight with the literal 6 days creationists because it's just what are you gonna say to them? You know. What the hell else did I want to mention? Oh yeah, I know what I want to talk about. There's a couple of things I want to talk about. I want to talk about an article on some theological issues. Somebody shared this on Facebook. Let me bring this up on my phone because I'm afraid to bring articles up. Barnhart, BARNHARDT.biz is the site name. For those of you playing at home, I didn't put anything in the description because I'm really, really bad about that. Somebody says, how about ask them if they believe the world is only 6,000 years old? Look, I'm not going to say that there aren't plenty of holes you can poke in evolutionary models and shit, but I just, the idea that the universe is only 6,000 years old and the literal 6 days, it just doesn't hold water to me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a terrible Christian for thinking that. I can't. I can't quite make the literal Genesis leap of faith there. Now, thankfully, that's not what my salvation hinges on. I stand at the gates of heaven. I point to Christ and I say, I'm with that guy. Nobody's gonna There's not a quiz on how old the Earth is. So the article I'm mentioning here, so he says they disable comments on all their videos. Yeah, I don't like that either. That's faggy. As I said, there's been some great. I think their videos on Catholicism and Orthodoxy are really good. Because they don't even seem that biased. They're just like, here's Catholic and Orthodox doctrines. Here's why it doesn't match up with the scripture. Deal with it as you will. So the article I'm looking at here, hell, so much worse than you can possibly imagine. And there's some interesting stuff in this article. But there's a couple of things I wanted to comment on. 1 second. Okay, so pretty much everyone in a post-Christian, post-Western culture today knows someone or is a close relative of someone who is divorced or remarried. Remarried's in quotation marks. Someone who is shacking up or fornicating. Someone who is simply just fornicating, aka hooking up. And sadly, everyone knows someone who is married and contracepts, because everyone on a statistical basis contracepts. And contraception, like all of the other sins against the sixth commandment, is a mortal sin. This is a heavily Catholic article, I should mention. Now, I freely admit that when I first read this, I had to look up what the sixth commandment was. Now, I could recite the 10 commandments to you, but I can't. I admit I can't do them in order. The sixth commandment is "Thou shalt not murder." Now, one could certainly argue abortion is murder, even in the earliest stages. I'm not sure about the earliest stages. I don't know. If I had to draw a line somewhere, it's, can you show me that the fetus has brain activity? When you're just dealing with initially a fertilized egg, I don't know. I'm somewhat agnostic on that. But a condom isn't murder. I just fucking Catholics. The fucking autism of the trad Catholics. It says different denominations count the commandments differently. I wasn't aware of that. I just figured they went with whatever order they originally were in the text. As I said, I couldn't. I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't do sword drills and shit like that. You got to cut me a break. I have a pretty good grasp of the scripture, but I read it like it's a fucking book. I don't read it like it's a textbook. I don't memorize exactly what's on every fucking page. I could tell you the overall, I could give you an outline on any of the gospels, for example. I couldn't tell you exactly what's in exactly what verse. I didn't memorize the scripture so much as I read it and absorbed it. Whether that's better or worse, you can certainly argue, but that's just what I did because I wasn't in school doing it. So all forms of contraception are against the sixth commandment. Yeah. So he goes on and he starts talking about how the different people in hell. And this was just telling. And there's some interesting stuff in this article. There's certainly some stuff in here I agree with, but that's not what I feel like talking about because I'm an ornery motherfucker like that. Ornery, not horny. Ornery motherfucker like that. Somebody says, I guess the Catholic view is uncooked food counts as a missed meal. Yeah, I don't, I mean, it's truly in the parody world of every sperm is a life or whatever the hell they're going with here. He mentions just a bunch of people in hell, and he talks about Catholics in hell. And right there, by the way, somebody says sixth commandment for Catholics is adultery. Well, I just quickly went on the Bing because Google is evil and typed in sixth commandment, and the first one that came up was thou shalt not murder. So I'm just going with that. Again, I couldn't tell you the order. I mean, I could bang them off for you, but I couldn't do them in order. Um, See, he talks about Catholics in hell, and that's like I said, that's as a Christian, as a I guess conservative Protestant, a Baptist. They just always lump you in. You're a Baptist, um, because again, Catholics like to complain that there's six gajillion forms of Protestantism, and yet they can only name off like three. Um, but you don't go to hell based on what you do. Okay, because if it's based off what you do, there isn't a single solitary human being that avoids it. You go to heaven based off being in the blood of Christ. Um, the Catholics in hell again. I don't believe there are Christians in hell. Therein lies the difference. By the very nature, and there may have been professing Christians in hell, but I mean, whatever, you can call yourself fucking anything you want. All right. Um, with honest to God, saved, accepted Christ Christians, no, they're not in hell. This is what happens to this legalistic shit. It turns Christianity into this bullshit of like, God's gonna weigh your good and bad deeds or shit like that, or you're constantly gonna lose your salvation every 3 fucking seconds. I don't know how these fuckers live like this. I If you honestly think that you lose your salvation for this laundry list of sins that like he's arguing that like if you got divorced and you got remarried, and don't get me wrong, divorce is wrong in almost all cases. But there does come a point where God takes you as you are. Okay, when you repent, he's not going to ask up to break up the marriage you're in and go back. No, at a certain point, the good Lord takes you as you are, and goes from there. You know, God isn't interested in trying to redo the past, undo the past. He's interested in trying to change the trajectory of your future. This guy argues that if you're divorced and remarried, just stop having sex with your current wife because you're not really married, and just shit like that, or you'll go to hell, or you'll go to hell. Apparently, the blood of Christ just doesn't cover it, or you'll go to hell. Um, I don't know how these guys live like this. If he thinks that you're going to go to hell because you sin, and he doesn't think he's going to hell, he doesn't understand himself. He doesn't understand his own nature. He just doesn't. Anybody who thinks salvation has a thing, has a bit to do with you, to do with your works, would either have to live in constant fucking terror of an almost certain eternal damnation, or have their head 3 feet up their own ass and not understand their own nature. God help me if my entrance into heaven has a thing to do with my merit. And if you think it has a thing to do with your merit, you should either be in a state of you're either in a state of despair or delusion. So yeah, if you're divorced and you get remarried, odds are you shouldn't have done that. In almost all cases, that was a sin. Um, but at a certain point, you just got to deal with things as they are, and this is your marriage now. Deal with this if you repent. Somebody says, "Do you believe in Calvinist limited atonement?" I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm not overly familiar with Calvinism, despite having a Calvinist as a sidekick. I'm not sure exactly what that doctrine means. Um, it, is that the idea that Christ only paid for the sins of the chosen? I guess. Um, Somebody says a lot of trad Catholics are borderline or complete Pharisees. Yeah, that's at least what I'm seeing. Um, but as for the limited atonement thing, this sort of gets into the murky territory of free will versus sovereignty. Um, there is definitely the biblical doctrine that God chose you for salvation before the foundations of the earth, but it also very clearly says it's not God's will that any should perish and that all should come to salvation, and that any um, who come to Christ shall be saved. So it sort of has that tension again between free will and predestination. And this was a huge stumbling block intellectually for me coming to Christ because, simply put, the Bible teaches both free will and predestination. And it's very easy to say, well, logically, those things can't coexist. But at the same point, at the same time, I don't understand how a being logically exists outside of time. Um, so at a certain point, I had to just accept I don't know how these things coexist. I don't know how things are both predetermined and I am free to choose and responsible for my choices. I don't know how those things and honestly, I think I don't want to say full on heresy because that's too strong of a word, but error. Let's just say error. I think that the common error is to either diminish one or both of those factors, either God's sovereignty or free will, in an effort to make them fit. Well, they don't fit together, at least not from my limited human perspective. But that's because I have a limited human perspective. Okay. The difference between the smartest man ever to walk the earth and God is, you know, infinitely greater than the difference between the smartest man to walk the earth and an amoeba in intelligence. Amoeba, yeah, Nintendo amiibo. No, an amoeba, a single celled organism. um, so yes, Christ died for all. Um, it doesn't mean everybody's received that gift, but it's on the table for everybody. Somebody says maybe it's just me, but I don't see why being baptized gets you a get out of hell free card. Plenty of people proclaim Christianity while committing heinous sins. Okay, well, I didn't say baptism got you a get out of hell free card. I said being born again does. Okay, you know, being baptized in the Holy Spirit when you're initially saved does. Um, yes, many professing Christians can continue to commit heinous sins, and they may simply be professing, and it was never a true belief, or maybe they're real Christians and they're just still doing kind of shitty stuff. Um, you know, the fruit of good works is the evidence of salvation. It's not the reality of it. It's just the evidence that we see. And if you're not seeing fruit in yourself, you should examine yourself and say, is this really, have I really, um, am I kidding myself here? Have I, have I really been saved? But, you know, you can actually be saved. And at least from our earthly perspective, nobody sees the evidence yet. Maybe someone's so shitty that they just go to being just kind of shitty, and to the rest of the world, we just see this as Pastor Tom told a story of somebody who, I think it was a sports star, who came to Christ, and he was having like 30 affairs on the road a year against his wife. And then, after he was saved, he only ended up having three. Well, you could be like, he's still an adulterer. He must not be saved. Well, he got better, didn't he? And you know what? In God's eyes, we're all pretty much that asshole who went from 30 affairs to three. A Christian says in the chat, seems every stream I hop on is any more some weird Catholic bashing. No, this is some weird legalist bashing. This is me defending the doctrine of salvation through Christ alone. If you're not on board with that, I don't know what to tell you. But that doctrine is otherwise known as Christianity. He ends this article with, "For the love of God, go to confession. In fact, just make a general confession just to be sure. I really, really hope this helps." Again, I can't imagine. I can't imagine living like this. I can't imagine thinking that your salvation is just, a, a gnat's ass away from going away at any given time, all the time. I no wonder so many of these hyper autistic Uber trads are so angry and humorless all the fucking time. I mean, the amount of stress you got to be under. Bechtloff, are fundamentalists and pre-Utah statehood polygamous Mormons considered adulterers and heretics? Well, I don't believe Mormons are actual Christianity. I don't believe. I don't really believe Mormons are saved in any. I don't think they're actually saved. So, I mean, to some extent, it's not even all that useful to talk about. Who's an adulterer, who's a murderer. At the end of the day, you're either in the blood of Christ or you're not. Mormons are white Jews. Okay, so I'm going to change gears to a bit of a lighter topic. First, let me go through the chat a little bit here. Somebody's saying, Bechtloff, thoughts on the shutdown or DSP or the Tide Pod eating? Well, I've talked about DSP a great deal. I talked about him a great deal yesterday. That was quite the funny saga going on around him. For the rundown of it, I would suggest Medicare's video, DSP King of Catfish. The Tide Pod eating, is that a real fucking thing, or is that like a meme that a bunch of normie boomers thought was real? I don't know. Thoughts on the shutdown? I think I've talked about this a little bit, but the Democrats shut down the government, despite the fact that they've for years said that a government shutdown is the worst possible fucking thing you can do, and they shut down the government to defend illegals. I don't see how the optics are any good on any of this for them. 'Bechtloff, did you see the Peterson Channel 4 interview? I've seen bits and pieces, and I've certainly seen all the memes about it people are watching, but I haven't watched the whole thing. And I don't know that I'm going to. I like Peterson, but I can't imagine it's anything more than frustrating to watch anybody talk to that level of a fucking leftist brick wall. 83 people called poison control because they ate Tide Pods. Well, okay, if people are just eating fucking Tide Pods, I'm not really sure. I'm not inclined to stop them. That's just natural selection taking out the trash. I mean, So he says it's only fun to see the poning. I mean, I'm sure Peterson can make an absolute fool out of her, but it's just, it's not a difficult thing. I heard people were vaping the Tide Pods. Oh, Jesus. Oh, forgive me, Lord. Wow. Well, how about that? So I want to change topics for a little bit here, and this is probably going to end up being an animated video. I've been really slacking this past week. There's some audio I've really been meaning to record for Luke for the animated videos, and somebody says, Bechtloff, I tried to order the wizard robe from the Lady Cherokee, but she didn't have a color that matched the couch. Well, keep checking in. She might have more in stock. I love that video. I hope people love that as much as I did, because I found it amusing as shit. I love. Oh, people. Matt Forney's always the Tide Pod thing real. People are talking to him and said, "I love watching the reality hit Matt Forney in the chat." Um. Okay, so changing topics, and like I said, I wanted this will probably be an animated video at some point. Um, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the Big Bang Theory. And this is going to be kind of similar to my Rick and Morty video, the animated video I did. So let me briefly go over my history with this show, as it were. When this show first came on, I remember seeing the commercials for it and people talking about it. And I thought, okay, well, I'll check this out. So I checked out the pilot when it first aired. It's like, oh, it's a show about nerds. I'm a nerd. I can check this out. And I considered it unwatchable, and I think I made it halfway through it. And was like, done. This is garbage. So the show went on for a few years, was insanely popular. Everybody rambling on about it. Finally, like probably 3 years later, like 2010, 2011, somebody's like, dude, you got to check out the show. And I finally just sat down and watched some of the reruns. And this is a few years into it. And lo and behold, it was actually pretty funny at that point. I actually kind of liked it. And for about maybe a year there, I was actually pretty into the show. I was like, yeah, it's pretty damn funny. And then after a while, I started to be like, this is getting old. And I just kind of fell out of it. Now, what I find interesting about the show, more so than the show itself, is in some regards, much like Rick and Morty, it's become this absolutely fucking um, polarizing thing. And not to sound like one of those both sides are dumb guys or anything, but I sort of feel like every criticism and every praise I've ever heard of this show are both right. There are times I think the show was incredibly funny. The two main actors, Johnny Galecki and Jim Parsons, are both tremendous comedic actors, and arguably to the extent the show's ever really good, it's because of those guys. Um, both of them are, like I said, tremendous comedic actors and deserve to be in a lot of things. And there's some times that it really rung true with me as a nerd, and it really really connected with me. J.E. Gonzalez, thank you for the super chat, which is COP, some sort of foreign currency at 20,000, looks like. Well, thank you. I don't know what that comes to in American, but thank you. It's probably like 3 cents. And Google's going to take one of them, one of them pennies. But anyways, there were lots of moments in it that genuinely made me laugh. Like there's one moment where the three girlfriends are trying to understand why their nerd boyfriends love comics so much. So they just sit down and read a bunch of comics. And at first they're like, these are so stupid. And then like later on, they're all arguing about it, like really passionately, like screaming at each other, like, how can Red Hulk be worthy to pick up Thor's hammer? And the other girl screaming, like, you don't know his life. Um, that's just really funny to me. I've seen that firsthand. I've seen my high school sweetheart and all, I actually got her to read the first volume of Ultimate Spider-Man um, back in the day, and she was like, oh, and this was before the Spider-Man movie was even out. She's like, oh my god, I cried when Uncle Ben died. It's the second girl that told me that that had read that. Um, Apparently, that super chat is, according to the other people in the chat, is Colombian pesos and translates to roughly $7. Well, thank you for the $7. I appreciate it. Um, so, like I said, there are times I thought the show was really, really good. There are times I thought the show was ass. Um, I think its quality arc kind of follows a bell curve, with it being in the shitter in season one, the middle seasons being pretty decent, and then just running its dick into the dirt in later seasons. Um, I don't think it's a bad show. Certainly not a great show. I don't think it's a bad show overall. Somebody in the chat said it's written for boomers and fake nerds. There definitely isn't. My dad is a big fan of it, actually, and he's a big fan of it because he has a son that's into geek culture. He has, and a bunch of friends that he's known through that. It's primarily written for people who know geeks, not for geeks. Um, like I said, I don't think it deserves quite as much hate as it gets. It certainly doesn't deserve as certainly doesn't deserve the success it has. But I will say that both Jim Parsons and Johnny Galecki are pretty damn good actors, and they deserve to be in more shit than they are. Let's see. People in the chat, seven shekel Sanchez. Yep. Um, Somebody talking about a U.S. dollar is worth almost 3,000 Colombian pesos. Yeah, it's funny. Funny how that works. Um, let's see. Going to the chat here. Um, how good can a Tide Pod taste? I imagine not good. Somebody says Google Tide Pod Chan. Uh, the chat here. In some ways, I think Big Bang Theory sort of was a precursor to the Rick and Morty phenomenon, in that it's become this insanely polarizing thing. Um, I've heard it said, you know, Rick and Morty is Big Bang Theory for people who hate the Big Bang Theory. Uh, but it definitely, it's become this polarizing thing. Like my thoughts on the Big Bang, or on Rick and Morty, is that it's a funny show. It's a funny, sometimes very clever show. It peaked at the end of season two, and will probably continue to go downhill from here. But it's still entertaining. Um, I find it very obnoxious with the people who have to form an aspect, if not the entirety of their personality based on whether or not they love or hate that show. If you don't think it's funny, then don't watch it. If you think it's funny, watch it. Um, She says, I got to go soon. My church is having a paintball war. Oh, that sounds like fun. Um, is anyone planning on reading Peterson's new book? You know, I kind of am myself. I mean, obviously, right now I'm a little fucking broke, but you know, starting next Friday, I'll be getting regular checks again, weekly checks, and then when I get hired on the company full time, it'll be bi-weekly, I imagine. But I'll be getting paid again, decent regular money. So yeah, I'll probably check it out. I mean, look, Peterson does good stuff. Yeah, you can shit on the guy for being a bit of a shill, but hey, you know, if you want to make a living at this kind of thing, you got to do the hustle. You know, I started this stream by talking about how I'm going to start an Amazon wish list, and I always used to think that sounded faggy, like you know, it's like some findom cam girl shit. But fuck it, if somebody wants to buy me something I kind of wanted to buy myself anyways, then let them. Um, you got to hustle a bit. Um, Jimmy says, I hate that Rick and Morty has such a cancerous fan base. The reason I watched it in the first place was because of Bechtloff. You know, I really envy some of my buddies who, like, I have a couple of friends that don't pay attention to internet shit a lot at all. Um, so you know, they just watch Rick and Morty and like it. Like they're not really aware that Dan Harmon is such a shithead. They're not really aware of people burning down McDonald's for fucking nuggy sauce. Like they're not aware of that. They're just blissfully unaware of that. They just watch a show in fucking peace. Um, Somebody says the thing that makes Big Bang Theory unwatchable for me is that it mixes subcultures that have very little to do with each other. Hardcore science nerds and comics nerds have very little in common with each other. I don't know if I'd say that. Um, I think a lot of hardcore science nerds tend to have some sort of goofy hobby like that. Um, they may not be hardcore geek culture, but they'd be like really nerdy about something, you know? Even if they end up being like overly analytical and critical and dissecting of it, like Arini is to the things he likes because he can't admit that he likes things. And I love you, Arini, but let's be real. Uh, but yeah, I think you know they wouldn't be maybe as fucking um, as pop culture obsessed of those guys. But part of it is the exaggeration of a show. They want to hit as many. Like they don't want to show a guy who's just about this one thing. They want to hit as many things as possible for the sake of appealing to a broader audience. There are a few things in that show I thought were absolutely incredibly well done. I really, really like the fact that, like, if you look at Sheldon's mom and Leonard's mom, um, like each of them kind of sort of hate their mom, and each of them has the mom the other would want, which I think is kind of an interesting dynamic for a show. And there's a few episodes that have Bob Newhart guest starring, where he plays a character called Professor Proton, who's this old, washed-up former, you know, Mr. Wizard type guy who used to have, who was a childhood idol of these two scientist characters. And Bob Newhart's just funny as shit, even in his old age. He's just fucking hilarious. Um, like I said, the show definitely has its moments. Um, so I don't think it deserves quite the hate it gets. And in some ways, it's like every what the hell's that guy's name? Just blanked on his name. The producer who created Big Bang Theory. I think he also did Two and a Half Men. He's very famous for doing a lot of sitcoms, and all his sitcoms share one thing in common: a solid premise, tremendous casting, hit or miss writing at best. Chuck Lorre, that's who I was thinking of. Like I said, though, there's something else I think that the show. This is almost by accident, but I find it very interesting. First of all, the Jewish character Howard is an insanely negative stereotype of a Jew, which is funny. Um, and then they have the Indian character who's just very obviously a fucking diversity hire working for this university, which again is funny because he's easily the weakest mind of the four of them, and the show just basically admits this as much as they can get away with doing so. Um, but something I've always found interesting when I watch the show. So you take the three main guys, take the diversity hire out of the equation. You get the uber aspy guy Sheldon. You get the kind of just normal dork guy Leonard, and then you get Howard the Jew. Now Howard's an engineer, and among the three of these characters, he's the dumbest. Now he's the dumbest among three geniuses, but he's the dumbest among the three of them. Leonard being in the middle, and then Sheldon being the genius that borders on mental illness. But what's interesting is it kind of it might have been accidentally, but it kind of shows that sort of diminishing returns on intelligence, as it were. Howard's the one doing the most good for the world. Howard's the one doing the most tangible, actual fucking science. The theoretical physicists, um, basically, without an engineer to test their shit, they're basically writing really well informed fucking science fiction. Speculative fiction, essentially. So in some ways, it does sort of show that diminishing returns on intelligence. Um, the dumbest of the three is the one most likely to invent something that makes the world a better place. So he says, any thoughts on the Black Mirror? I have not caught the Black Mirror, to be honest. I've been meaning to, but I mean, I haven't watched a lot of TV in a while. Even the shows I do watch, I'm way behind on. Is this the Bechtloff defend something everyone hates hour? I guess. I'm half-heartedly defend. And don't get me wrong, so many of the criticisms of Big Bang Theory are absolutely true. As I said, the thing I would say about the Big Bang Theory is that all the praises of it and all the criticism of it are both kind of true. um, so he says Sheldon's contribution to the world is snark, funny snark, admittedly. Pretty much. Let's see. I use the wish list on Amazon to keep track of items I want to buy. Sometimes it's hard to find the exact product I viewed perhaps 2 weeks prior. That makes sense. I actually had a wish list from years ago because a couple of buddies of mine, we all did that just so we could when we were Christmas shopping for each other, there would be here's a bunch of stuff I want, get something off this list kind of thing. If you can't think of an idea. Let's see. Just saying every once in a while, man, you have to defend something the internet shits on. Yeah, again, I don't think Big Bang Theory is as bad as everyone says. I'd say the middle few seasons there are pretty decent, you know. Um, so he says the meme where Sheldon schools Penny over her astrology is gold. Uh, like I said, there's a lot of really good moments in it. Pardon me. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about the Black Mirror, though. I've been meaning to watch it. I want to check out that Bright movie too. Um, let's see. Uh, let's see. Rick and Morty is the greatest work of existentialist literature. Um, hey, Bechtloff, have you ever seen Stellarius, or do you like Empire building games, or Stellarius, or do you like Empire building games? I mean, I'm not much of a PC gamer, and that's where most of those games would be on, so I haven't really played a ton of them. She says I was going to watch Bright last night, but then I fell asleep. Um, let's see. What else did I want to mention on here? Talked about that article. I want to talk about Big Bang Theory. Probably going to do an animated video on that. A couple of animated videos I really want to do. Yeah, that's probably it. Tell you what, I'll go ahead and open this up to callers. Man, I feel like I'm going to sneeze again, but it's not quite on there. Throw me off. If anybody wants to call in, go ahead and message me now. Hey, Christian, if you want to call in, I know you were bitching earlier about me being all anti-Catholic. So, anybody wants to call in, I'll give you a couple minutes because I know there's a delay. Here's a good thing. Beckloff, I can't help but notice how gossipy many of us have become, going from listening to rants about Spencer, Spoonie, and Lindsay, etc., but I can't help but feel some shame enjoying my entertainment from gossip. I don't even know if I'd call it gossip in most cases. I mean, gossip is kind of digging into people's personal lives, I always thought, or spreading things that aren't that aren't that's things you can't substantiate, things you can't prove. Like, did you hear George did this? Oh man! And then you go to the next person, and go, I heard George did this. That's kind of gossip in my eyes. What we're doing here is discussing what public figures did publicly, primarily. There is sometimes some speculation, perhaps more than there should be. But no, we're analyzing the public actions of public figures. I don't think that's gossip. Pardon me. I know I'm snorting and all. Sound like DSP here. Pardon me. I know that was probably gross. Are we gossiping or laughing at it like Jim does? I think we're mostly laughing at it. Like I said, giving it a little bit here in case anybody wants to call in. Message me on the Skypes, the Bechtloff on the Skypes, or even just, you know, I guess you can message me on Facebook, the Bechtloff on Facebook. I'll check that real quick. Doesn't look like we got anything. All right, well, I guess I'll wrap this up then. All right, folks, I want to thank you all for listening. If you enjoy the show, enjoy the content I put out there, do consider checking out the Patreon, becoming a regular supporter. Do consider checking out the PayPal. sending a one-time gift. And as I said, I'm going to be further diversifying that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's the super chat too. And I'm going to look into that Brave thing Forney was talking about. I'm going to look into getting some cryptocurrency wallets, that kind of thing. All right. So, like I said, thank you all for listening. That's all I got for this morning. Bechtloff out.